We are in the superhero battle room. You already know the name of the show and what we go over and do. Our guest is Travis Johnson. He has transformed our podcast, and we're going to share about his journey. So he is a military man, has served his country, and is now serving our communities through the power of podcasting and beyond. If you've watched our last few episodes, even his wisdom has made our episodes better, because our goal is to serve you in the community. Not about our needs, about your needs. So we're going to bring him forward to go share his wisdom, share his testimony, and maybe dive into some deep, deep things. Hey, Travis, do I have you?
Yeah, I'm here, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So let's just get this party started. So we're going to share a little bit about your past, but I'm going to ask it in a different way. So we asked last time when we did this recording first time, Analysis 2.0, what inspired you to join the military? But I want to know, what also kept you going in there? Because as you read your story on LinkedIn and everything else and whatnot, you've gone through so much trauma and everything else, and then you joined the Navy. Because when we naturally get into trauma, we stay into our past trauma, and then we continue to bring future drama into that. So I want to expand a little bit in this question, not just what inspired you to join, but what kept you going, because the military brings additional drama.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, my background involved 36 moves, 12 schools, 6 states, 5 different foster homes, 8 total survived murder attempts from 2 family members. Ended up being houseless for a while, and then I ended up moving out of my house at 16, joining the Navy at 17. Uh, really doing something with my life. I had a criminal background, criminal record, and to get away from that, when you look at what kind of options you might have, there's not a lot of options available. Small town Minnesota, I knew more cops, judges, and lawyers than I did like regular people, regular citizens. And you're everyone knows like your whole family background, all your family struggles. And so the only really way to make a name for yourself is to leave. And I was working 3 jobs. I was getting up every morning at 5 a.m., going to open up Burger King, drive across town, go run the lunch counter at the bowling alley, and then unload truck at Walmart from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. And I did that 5 days a week. And it's not really sustainable. You can't really build a life working like that, especially if most of that stuff was for minimum wage back then, back in the late 1900s. And my dad's like, why don't you get rid of those 3 crappy jobs and get one good job? And he talked about the military. And I asked him what I should do. And he's like, I don't know what you should do, but I know they treat those aviation boys pretty well. And I went to the recruiting office and went to go talk to the Air Force. And they stopped me, before I walked in. Like, do you have a criminal record? I was like, is it more than a parking ticket? I said, and they're like, we can't help you. And I walked down to the Navy recruiter and ended up signing up to do what he did as a aviation structural mechanic safety equipment technician working on F-18s. And what kept me going was the fact that I had the chance to build a life of my own. Right? They didn't care who I was before I joined. The only thing they cared about was I going to be able to do the stuff that they needed me to do. Right? Could I show up on time in a good looking uniform with a fresh haircut, with a great attitude, ready to do the work? And I could do that every day, and allowed me to build a life for myself, build a life for my family, and was able to keep building for them.
Yeah, I think of all those things you're going through, you could have just been negative. You could have just been jaded. You could have been that soldier that was sarcastic, and then not sadistic. There's many different words you could add in there. I met a guy when I was not deployed in Korea. He was 19 years old. He looked younger than me. We're still friends to this day, so he knows. And he was just an angry, bitter airman for a long time. And now he's got the long beard and he shaved his head and everything else. And I mean like ZZ Top long and everything else. And he stayed that way from coming from a bad background, getting in the military. I saw some of the things that jaded happened to him. And then he got out and he's still kind of jaded and
Hmm.
not. There's so many things. I'm like, the home moves, the homelessness, the murder attempts, having a rap sheet at 16 to 17 years old. What would you say that's the source? Because at the time when you say family, you have a family now and kids and everything else, but at the
Right.
time you're 16, 17 years old. When I know for me, I went through parents' divorce, brother's death, and molestation issues, and I said "f you" to God and "f you" to the world. And it wasn't until I had Jesus that started transforming. So, what was your anchor to say, okay, I'm now going to be productive and be that guy that's going to shine and have a great attitude?
Well, I tell you what, like fourth grade, I was already on 12 moves, if not more, or 12 different schools. No, hold on. I was at 9 different schools by fourth grade. And I got mad at the world. I got angry. I started acting out. I started lying, cheating, stealing, doing all the things that, kids know how to do when they're angry, which is not deal with their emotions. And I immediately got in trouble for it right away. And I cared about being in trouble. It bothered me being in trouble. It didn't stop me from being angry, but there was just so much chaos going on. I didn't ever have time to think. I didn't really have time to feel much of anything about it. It wasn't until my mom tried to kill me that I ended up really. We lived on the kind of the top of a gravel pit. There's an area where they're digging into the hill. We had a house up there.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in there, just all of these feelings going through me, and I'm just wondering, what's my life going to be? And I got this overwhelming feeling of calm, and this feeling that no one's coming to save me. That if I'm going to take care of my life, it's got to be me. I've got to choose to take responsibility and ownership for everything that I can. And when I realized that it was all on me, I walked up to the house, grabbed my stuff, told my mom I was leaving. I was going to go move in with grandma. And if she, loved me, that she would just let me go and not say anything about it. And I got in my car and drove off, realizing that, people in that situation don't always have that person they can run away to. Ran over to there, got my life sort of straightened out, was able to finish high school, and I thought I was smart, right? I knew that problems were happening, but I knew that they weren't have anything to do with me. You know what I mean? I knew it wasn't my problems. I was just in the situation. I was too close to the tornado, and as long as I stayed there, I was going to keep getting hit by debris that was flying around the circle, right?
Mhm.
Um, Being able to get away from that to a place where I was safe, that I was loved, all my foster care, I was safe and loved. Just in those environments. In fact, I just got back from Minnesota earlier this month. I went up, one of my stepmothers passed away at the beginning of the month, and was able to go up and see some of my foster siblings and hang around with them. And we really, really appreciated her for who she was. You know what I mean? So even though there was a lot of chaos in my life, there were still people that loved and supported me. I was able to feel safe around, was able to feel grounded around. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it was the love of people despite all the pain that washed over you that finally said, hey, I can go over and serve and I can be happy and I can be joyous in that particular regard, because
Mhm.
a lot of us don't get those things. And I think that's what we're lacking, maybe as veterans and as the community, is that we don't have that unconditional agape. It's a Greek word that means
Mhm.
unconditional love. That type of energy and that type of vibe, in a sense, whatever floats your boat, frequency, whatever that goes over and you get. Because for me, I know I didn't get that. So I just went in, and it wasn't until like came to Jesus, then married, and then about 7 years in, when I got spiritually kicked in the nuts, and then I then started really seeing that love, that unconditional love. That's what transformed me. So it sounds like those adoptive parents had that agape, that unconditional love that allowed you to heal, because you didn't have that much of a gap of time. Clinical psychology goes over and says, hey, do this time, do this healing, and time heals all wounds. You didn't have time. You just had healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I messed up the timeline earlier, like moved out at 16 or, mom tried to kill me at 15, moved out at 16, graduated high school at 17, joined the Navy at 18, got married at 19. I had our first daughter when I was 21, had my son when, we were, 26. There wasn't a lot of time. The big benefit for me is that going into boot camp, I sang in the choir, so I wasn't like in a regular rifle division like everyone else was. I was in a separate set aside division, so we weren't getting beat every day. Um, when I joined and got into the Navy, I was aviation. And the first squadron I went to was a training squadron. So we were there for pilots in training to come through, get the reps that they needed, get the X's they need to get qualified.
Mhm.
So I didn't deploy. The ship time that I had was on a couple of aircraft carriers, but it was 4 or 5 days at a shot. It wasn't like I was out and deployed and gone. Got married. My wife got pregnant. Chose orders to Oklahoma City to come be on the E6B, which is too big for the ship,
Mhm.
and really got to stay, had more stability and less trauma in the Navy than I did anywhere else. Had I joined and been, in infantry,
Mhm.
I probably would have a different story. But
Mhm.
being in aviation specifically is a much different part of the military than going straight to a ship and being, being an undesignated airman or, working ship's company, or much different than going to a battalion and going in and having to do that kind of work, like was really set aside based on what I brought to the table. High ASVAB score, was really well spoken, especially early. Was able to talk my way out of a lot of situations, like the standard situation where you show up as a brand new airman going to a squadron. They
Mhm.
put you in the line shack with a bunch of other a bunch of other delinquents, right? Young men and women that don't know anything about the military, are away from home the first time. And I got married young and was able to have my wife with me and really keep me away from all those different kinds of influences and that kind of bad thinking. I went straight to the shop, was able to kind of build my credibility, my professional credibility earlier without having to be around the people that really, drag on your mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's huge because my son's looking to go in the Navy right now, and I met some people while going down, like Catherine Hack. She's going to MIC. She does Christian content. She also helps with trauma with soldiers and everything else. And her husband, I guess, is straight Navy, and they're down there in near what is it called? Langley Air Force Base, Norfolk area, and it's like he's like on again, off again deployments and everything else. It's like he lives on the ship for maybe 5, 6 days, then he's home for a couple of days, and then he goes out, and then if there's a deployment, he's gone for 6 months and everything else. And they have a few kids, and they've had their kids. They have kids that they're working through their own problems, and it's like they're still that would be a lot for me. I mean, like, I'm glad that I was Air Force and had that stability. Like, we had Office Stupid, but then when I heard their version of Stupid, I'm like, I couldn't handle that. So it sounds like almost God worked through that situation for you to give that stability. And then also your
Mhm.
wife. Did your wife go over and help with kind of the healing journey in that particular regard too? Because you got married so young and then have kids and everything else. Was that part of the journey?
Yeah. Yeah, the 3 biggest and best decisions I made were God, the Navy, and my wife. Had I not done any of those 3, I can't imagine what my wife or my life would look like. But being in the Navy station in Oklahoma, brought a ton of stability. All of the different squadrons you would then attach to, they're all in the same parking lot. So when you transfer, you walk across the parking lot to your new command. Right? I did 5 years fixing airplanes, and then I got picked up for a 3-year instructor tour across the parking lot to teach. And I got picked up for the Seaman to Admiral program, which is a commissioning program. They sent me full time to the University of Oklahoma to get my degree, which was just down the street. Right. So family life, being on sea duty on a plane too big for the aircraft carrier, right? Not having to deploy traditional deployments, and then going to an instructor duty, and then going to university and staying in the same place for what is that, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years without
Wow.
moving, without
Mhm.
doing anything, without being gone for these long deployments. Help us get a church, help us, build a community, help us get connected, help us do all the things that we needed to do as a young family. My wife was able to start a job and have a career without having to move. And we picked up and moved to Pensacola, Florida, so I could go to flight school because no one could tell us how long flight school was. Right?
Wow.
There's early off ramps, but after every tier of training, there's an off ramp to a different airplane. If you stick around to another next tier of training, a new airplane that you can go to, if you stick around again, so it can be anywhere from a year to 3.5 years worth of training.
Wow.
I had considered leaving my family here in Oklahoma City while I went down to do training, but I was like, I couldn't sign up to be away for 3 years. That didn't make sense. So I took them down with me, went through flight school, which was just crazy. By the way, the attrition rate in aviation, especially through flight school, is the highest in the military, which is just absolutely nuts. I think outside of special forces, or it's really close. It really is. But ended up finishing training in 10 months, and then got orders to come back to Oklahoma, fly an airplane for 3 years, go across the parking lot, teach for another 3 years. Ended up going to Bahrain for 1 year. My family stayed here. I came back, did a tour at the wing, and then retired. So, other than the year in Pensacola, the 1 year away in Bahrain, and the first 2 years that I did on F-18s, like my 20 years essentially out of my 22-year career was in Oklahoma.
That's a unique blessing from any branch of service. I mean, for me, I caught up to your moves once I went in the military. So you had all those moves early in your life,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
I caught up. So for me, it was like only one move, and that traumatized me. I went
yeah.
from one address to another in the same state, in the smallest state. And then that was that final thing. And then when I got into the military, what is it? I'll have, if I move to Texas, Lord willing, in 6 to 24 months, it would be a total of 37 moves in 43 years. You had that by the time you were like 16. You just wake up, here's my driver's license. And you're like, what state do I get it in? Where do I go? And everything
Yeah,
else. So it
yeah.
sounds like your life kind of stabilized the exact opposite way when you got into the Navy.
It did. Yeah, I only had 14 moves in the military total, um, which is just crazy. So I'm at 50 right now, 50. But when you look at if you go through therapy and you look at things about mental health, and you look at most of the traumatic things, like my child ACEs score is 10, right? That's
Mm.
the highest score. Here I am maxing out tests even as a kid. That's very traumatic. Just moving once is traumatic. Getting married is traumatic. Living through divorce as a child, I had my dad, and then there's two stepdads. Um, all the different schools, constantly having to meet new groups of people, new groups of people, new groups of people. And so when the Navy came to move me the first time to Oklahoma, they're like, "Oh, it's not that bad. It's going to be a tough move, but you're going to be all right." I'm like, "It's just moving. I've done this, dozens of times already." But for most of the people hadn't. And so the Navy on those aspects really traumatized me a lot less than my childhood did.
Yeah. So, speaking of moves, it also affects families and everything else. So, those 14 moves that you had in there, how did you go over and help your kids go over and cope with the moves compared to yourself? Because sometimes we
Mhm.
become anesthetized to what we do in life. What
Yeah.
about your
Yeah.
kids? Was it better for them? And what did you learn to go over and help them to better thrive in those moves?
So it wasn't too bad for the kids. We moved to Florida, and by the time we moved back, my son was 4 or 5. Right, so he hadn't really experienced losing friends and this and that. Like, he has like one or two memories from Florida, so he wasn't too bad. My daughter, on the other hand, did go to school for a couple of years in Oklahoma. Did do the 1 year in Pensacola, and then came back. She definitely had some struggles, but then when we were here and we stayed here, that allowed her to build that support group of friends. We moved into a place when we got back from Florida with the elementary school right in our neighborhood. So she just walked down the street to go to school. our junior high was right directly outside of our neighborhood, and then the high school was like a mile and a half from our house, 2 miles from our house. So like we was really able to gain that stability coming back from Florida, really build up that solid friend group and that friend core. Now she's married and they've got a daughter. So I'm a grandpa, right? Like I've got almost a 2-year-old grandkid already, which she's super cute. I love Rami to death, but you know, having that stability, like I don't know how my life would have been different had I had that stability early. I kind of look at my son right now. He's 17. He's like they call it a rising senior now, getting ready to start his senior year here in the fall. He plays for the tennis team. We look at his grades. He's doing great. He's had essentially straight A's his entire way through school. He's been able to build that core group of friends. He's been invited to National Honor Society. He plays tennis. He's in engineering classes at the local community college. I'm able to kind of look at his life and see what my life could have been had I had some stability. So it makes me a little bit sad about my childhood, but really great. Feels fantastic where I've come as a parent that we've provided him that sound footing for him to be able to do exactly what he needs to do to be a successful person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's a new movement I just found out. So since our last interview and now doing this one, there's one of people are going to be coming on our show, and they have this new thing called geospousing. And what it's supposed to mean is they're male spouses that geographically stay where it's best for the kids. So, for example, you got to be in Oklahoma the majority of the time, and there was very few moves. There's now a subset of male spouses because of the difficulty and everything else going over and doing that and staying there. Would you going over now looking at your life and your kids and thinking of your 17-year-old, would you have done that? Or would you even think higher level? Do you think our branch of service should it be embracing that type of thing, doing either longer tours or allowing those spouses to stay at that location if that's what's best for the family?
I don't know. That's an interesting concept. My family stayed in Oklahoma. I went to that year abroad in Bahrain. For my daughter, like so, I had the opportunity to have follow-on orders. I had the 3-star asked me to come with him to Tampa to go work at CENTCOM, and I declined. And the O6 asked me to go with him to the Pentagon after Bahrain, which I declined. And I declined those guys because I was already at 20 years and my daughter was getting ready to be a senior in high school.
Mhm.
Now, like her situation with her friends, we probably would have done well to actually move her. Uh, got into a bad crowd, a lot of toxic people. Um, if I could have tolerated the military for any more time, like I probably would have done it, and actually probably moved the whole family to Tampa. But I don't know. It's tough. Right? I took them with me to Florida because I didn't know how long flight school would be. I'm a huge fan of having two-parent households.
Mhm.
I know it doesn't work out for everybody,
Mhm.
right? And I know the military really doesn't help for the vast majority of service members. It doesn't help them to be two-parent households. We talk about this concept of being a married single parent.
Yeah.
Um, and when I came back from flight school, I did my 3 years at the squadron, like I was gone all the time. I went on 18 deployments in that 3 years. I was in
Woo.
and out. I was in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out all the time. You can never get a rhythm at home, right? You
Yeah.
can never really be caught up on what's going on at home.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, like my wife came from a really from a farming background, grew up on a farm, so the kids learn finances. The kids learn that you have to do what it takes to get everything done because it doesn't matter if you're sick. Like the cows got to be fed, right? It doesn't matter that it's cold outside, right? Got to take care of the chickens or whatever the scenario is, right? So my wife also had a boss that was very understanding. She was a pharmacy technician, and her boss understood, like, hey, my husband's deployed, so if she needed to leave to go take care of the kids to do something, she was able to. Uh, we Even though we both grew up in Minnesota, ended up in Oklahoma. Her sister ended up following us to Oklahoma, and
Mm.
she started a family here at the time when our kids were young. So she had her sister in town. So like we had some strategic advantages, in place in our household over the years. I don't know if I would recommend geo spousing. I don't know that I would not recommend it, but I know that, you know, losing that connection, losing that intimacy can never be good for the marriage or for the household. So that's a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a new concept, so I think it's going to have a lot of those deep type of questions. So you did 22 years. Obviously, it's part of the question. But what was the real culmination like to go over and leave? Do you have that aha moment? Do you remember the day when you clicked the button? Do you know? It's like, I know I did.
Mhm.
And I didn't, because I'm a numbers guy. I have roughly 114 days left. I remember October 18th of 2024. I remember it's like, Lord, it's like, go over and click it. It's like, why am I waiting?
Yeah.
So did
Yeah.
you have that aha moment that day? Did you and your spouse come together and go over and do it? Was it just a point of like, hey, I know some people that got denied promotion twice and like, nope, I am done. So they forced me out. So I'm just curious, was it an elected decision? Did you know the day? Was it just like a, hey, I clicked in, forgot about it? I know reservists had done that. They forgot they retired. I was like, wow, how do you do that?
So there was a like everybody's military services, right? There was a lot of good and there was a lot of bad. There was a lot of good. I was able to get a lot done in my career. I got it promoted in my first opportunity, every opportunity, all the way through E1 to E6, O1 to O4. I actually declined lieutenant commander to retire as an O3E. Um, but there was a lot of struggles. There was a lot of personal conflict. There was always it always kind of felt like someone was coming after me. And when I went to Bahrain, it was the best tour of my life. No, there's not a lot of officers that will say like their staff job was their best tour. Um, I had someone specifically twice in my career try to come after me to get me kicked out. I really
Wow.
couldn't tell you why she was so dedicated to trying to push me out. I don't know why she honed in on me. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not going to pretend I did everything right, but it's not like I was, causing problems.
Mhm.
Maybe she sees it differently. I could never tell you. But when I started my podcast over in Bahrain, when I started doing that, that went well and taken off, and I started making some money. I really kind of felt that the military was holding me back at that point, was preventing me from doing the things I needed to do to be successful in business. And I don't know if that's true or not, right? That's just how I felt. But I no longer. I've always been kind of a heavier guy. I no longer felt any desire to play their games for physical fitness
Mhm.
and all that stuff. Like it's always been a struggle for me as an adult to maintain a healthy weight and to do all those things. And when I got towards the end of it there, when I got a year out, I added some time on when I went to school for the program I went through. I had to
Mhm.
do that 2 years that I did extra that I did at school. I had to put that on top of 20 in order to be eligible to retire. So when I got back from Bahrain, COVID happened when I was over there. It was happening when I got back here. My daughter was going through, a big disaster in her life, and I wanted to kind of get out as quickly as possible. And it's strange that I say that way because it's not like I had a really hard time in the military, but I was just done. Like when you're done, and I was
Mhm.
done.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely knew I was on annual tour, and I'm like, Lord, what am I waiting for? And he's like, and basically said, what are you waiting for? And I'm like, I clicked it in a guy's office. I barely know the guy. I've only known him for like a day or two, and he's like, I just retired. I'm like, what do you mean you just retired? I'm like, it's that simple. You just clicked it and go. He's like, you retired in my office, like while you were here? I said, yeah. And I'm like, was I the cause? I'm like, no, you weren't the cause. I didn't retire
You
because of
should have
you.
told him he was the cause. It's because of
Oh,
you.
yeah, well, he knows me now, so now I can do that dry humor, and I can go over. I'm like, yeah, it's all your fault. This annual tour was the
Yeah,
worst. You should have
yeah,
found me on day one. You didn't find me until day
yeah,
4 of my day 5 tour. Yep, it's all about you.
yeah. No, this the so like if I would have accepted the promotion, the Navy would have required that I do 3 years to order to retire at that new rank. And I
Yeah.
knew every community, every military community does their detailing a little bit differently, depending where you're at. And I knew that if I took that promotion, that I would have to leave again. and I had already moved 50 times, and I couldn't see any benefit to moving another 2 times, right, to leave and then come back again. I couldn't see any benefit from leaving my family again. You know,
Yeah.
I retired 3 years ago now, 2022, so it's been, 3 years and 4 months, and in that
Mhm.
time, I was able to be here for when my wife had brain surgery, and I could be here fully for when she recovered. You know,
Wow.
I've got to go to all of my son's tennis tournaments, you know, go hang out with him at practice, able to spend, you know, like he's not working hard yet, but he's got a job now, so like I'm able to grab lunches with him
Mhm.
and go hang out. I'm able to spend some time. I can run up and see my granddaughter and see my daughter. They're living in the Oklahoma City metro here. Like I have the ability to do some of those things now that I wouldn't have had the chance to do had I stayed in. Had I stayed in, right, my wife would have had brain surgery while I was on active duty. And I don't know how
Yeah.
much time that I get off, you know,
Yeah.
to handle her. Her recovery lasted over a year. I know that I wouldn't have given the nothing wrong with the commands here, but there's only so much leeway they can give you, right? The job still has to get done.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I ended up in a car wreck last year and ended up in the hospital for a week, right?
Mhm.
You know, how would that have affected my career? Would I still be able to go see all my son's tennis tournaments? I know that's a no. You know, would I
Yeah.
have been away at my next tour of duty while he was doing that and going through his junior and senior year? Like I can't sign up for that. So when you have enough forces pushing you one way or the other, I mean, that's the decision that you're going to make. And I couldn't see any real benefit for staying. I would have got like another like 7.5% towards my retirement, right? I would
Yeah.
have retired at a higher pay grade that might have equaled 10 more grand a year,
Yeah.
right? Was that like 80 bucks a month? Something like that?
$800 and change. 800 and
$800, not 80, $800 a change.
no, you're
You know,
thinking reserve retirements. Reserve retirements are that
yeah,
chumpy.
yeah. Yeah, it'd have been $800 more a month, but how much would have I missed? How much would that have put my body through? Would I have been able to function at work? You know, my wife recovering from brain surgery. Like, I went. I got in that wreck. It turns out that I have bipolar disorder, and I didn't know. And I was in a manic episode, and I literally blacked out and drove into a car, and I ended up in the psych ward for a week. How would that have affected my Navy career? Would they have forced me to retire? Would I be able to retire on my own terms? These are questions that I can't answer. You know, I don't know what would have happened, but I'm glad that it unfolded the way that it did.
Yeah. I mean, I used to work in that world, so I have an idea what would happen because I've gone through a couple med boards. So you get clinically diagnosed, they go over and put you on a board to then go evaluate. They evaluate you based on your rate and everything else, and then you could get medically retired or medically separated, and depending on the situation, depending on how many years and everything else. Because I went through a med board myself. It seems
Mhm.
in this world nowadays, I can't say Navy, but I can say Air Force, if you stop breathing and there's some way they can reanimate your body, they'll keep you in. Because we had a guy that has an active brain tumor in the reserves and they denied him medical retirement. I'm like, it
Yeah,
has
yeah.
gotten so bad. And I talked to the medical doctors myself of all my injuries, and they said, because I said, hey, we forgot about your migraines and your headaches. We added all this stuff, but we've got this one. Would you want to go through a second round? I said, well, let me ask the question. I said, do you think I'm going to go get approved? I said, you've been doing this for 15 years. You did my first case. He's like, we probably put it on there and they probably still go over and just give you another profile waiver for your migraines and still have you do it. Because my job is to type things into a keyboard and make sure
Mhm.
databases are updated to get education and training. They're like,
Yeah,
if I
yeah,
lost my hand, they would have been like, "Oh yeah, you're medically retired."
yeah,
I'm like, "Why do I
yeah,
have to lose my whole hand?" But I have all these other ailments
yeah,
to have in there.
yeah. No,
So
no, the mission here is nuclear command and control, right? I wouldn't have been able to maintain a security clearance with that kind of mental health condition. I
yeah,
wouldn't have been able to maintain PRP. There would be zero use for me in this community. And if they would have kept me in, I would definitely have to be moved somewhere else because there's no jobs like that available here for me. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
everything is around. classified material. Everything that they do it requires that level of sanity. So I would have lost all my clearances. I would have been riding some desk somewhere till they made their decision, and they would have been done with me. But then you got to go through that whole process. Um, and that stuff takes 2, sometimes 3 years to go through. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd have been
right.
getting paid, right? I'd have been getting that O4 pay. Um, but I don't know that, it would have been worth it. So I got the
Yeah.
O3E retirement, because I was active duty. I'm getting paid now. I'm 100% disabled through the VA, so I'm getting
Yeah.
that. I'm in Oklahoma, so I don't pay state tax, property tax, sales tax, right? So I'm not I'm in a great spot, cheapest part of the country, making good money.
So the next place is heaven. That's the only place you're moving to. Is it? You're going vertical. That's it.
We've considered moving, but would probably be nearby because like my wife grew up on the same farm next door to her grandparents,
Oh
right?
wow.
And so her grandparents were a huge part of her life. And now we're, 900 miles ish away from the farm where all the
Mhm.
grandparents are, my parents and her parents. So they didn't get that time with their grandkids with my kids. But our granddaughter is within the metro. And I don't believe for a second that if we did move, we would probably be moving either closer, it's like 20 minutes away,
Yeah.
or someplace with a view, but still within 30-minute drive of going to see her because I don't think I could ever break those two up, grandma and granddaughter. Like that ain't happening.
Yeah. There's a special bond that changes. I've seen like I remember my grandmother, and even though both of them were like semi-toxic relationships, depending on what you look at it. There's things I can't say on podcasts. I'm not getting myself delisted, but the things that they said and did. But the point of the matter of it is that I still cherish those relationships with both my grandmothers.
Yeah.
Meme because it's French, so even sounds wrong me saying grandma. It's like it was meme. So I'd like to pivot this conversation a little bit because I remember you talking about the non-profit architect podcast, and I hope I'm saying it
Mhm.
right because it's been a while. That's where we met. So I want to talk about that transition point and maybe go dive deep in there. Is that how did you get started into that podcasting world? And secondarily, like, was that the trigger of you knowing that you were the closet entrepreneur?
Mm.
Because
Mhm.
I remember having a meeting with you and my wife, and we were at Mick, and you had such confidence, such boldness, such everything else. But that doesn't start right away. So I'm wondering if that was the catalyst. Was it the Bahrain deployment with the podcast that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
starting to transform you so you could just say, hey, I'm just done. I'll just make more money. Because that my mentality started going that way too. Like about 23, 24, I'm like, what's the point? I'll just go find a way to make more money. I'll go jump
Yeah,
into the couch cushions and everything else because it's just not worth
yeah.
it.
Yeah, so I had got to a point, in my personal growth and development where I felt a feeling I had not felt before. I felt like I was home, right? Moving so much, being in the military, being bounced around, like you don't know what that feeling is. For those of you that understand what that feeling is, I didn't have it. I didn't have it till I was in my 30s. Um, and I asked someone at church, I feel like I'm in the community, but like, how do I be part of a community? And they're like, oh, people in a community, serve in boards and they volunteer and they do all this different stuff. They give money to nonprofits and they help out. And I found myself on a couple of nonprofit boards here in Oklahoma City. And then when I got stationed overseas by myself, I was like, what can I do that's going to be productive that keeps me out of trouble? Because I know me, right? If I'm not tasked with something, like I'll get myself into trouble. Um, and someone was like, "Well, you should start a podcast." And I was like, "Podcast? Like, I don't know anything about podcasting." And he's like, "Well, I mean, you have this voice for it, right? Like, you have this smooth, understanding voice, like a really good tonality." I was doing all the briefs over in Bahrain. Ended up being a big part of my job. Even got to brief General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs at the time, and he's like, "You have this beautiful voice, and like you could probably do something about nonprofits." And I kicked the idea around, and I went and did a little bit of research. I talked to some people in the industry, like, "What do you do? How do you do it?" and then like find your voice. What's gonna make you stand out? So I went through and I listened to the top 25 or the top 50 podcasts out there in the nonprofit space. And I did this research and I realized like there was only two types of shows out there, right? One type of show was just kind of industry professionals. They were kind of BSing. They maybe had like 2.5 minutes worth of value. Really wasn't that great of a show. And then the other type of show that was out there was a nonprofit highlight show. You're like, hey, we've got Daniel on today. His nonprofit is War Hero, the Superhero. Tell us about, just a highlight show. But I didn't feel like there was anyone really providing any value out there. And so I set out to do an interview show. I knew a lot, but I didn't know everything. And so I wanted to have industry professionals come on, nonprofit leaders, consultants, business leaders, people that do marketing, branding, internet stuff, to come on and really teach people how to do nonprofit work better. So we call it the Nonprofit Architect Podcast, helping you build a stronger nonprofit. And everyone came in and they taught their secret sauce. Where I knew I was onto something is I started in September, and by December I was number 4 in the U.S. within
Wow.
3 months of launching, which is just it's just wild. It has nothing to do with me. There's no way. I didn't know what I was doing yet, right? I didn't know. There's so much I didn't know. There's so much I still don't know, but there was so much that I didn't know, and so it can only be a God thing, right? But I took that leverage. I started helping other people do it right, like our friend Richard Kaufman, helping him
Oh,
do
yeah.
it better. We took his show from 6,000 downloads to 600,000 downloads, and now he's up over 3 million. I know I
Mhm.
wasn't his only mentor, but like it was a really good conversation. And he's like, "You need to put this in a book." And I did some research, and I bought a podcast guide that just really made me angry. Like it made me pissed off. Like, how is this? Like you read something and you're like, how the this person put their name on this garbage? Like I was really upset that they were making money from this.
Yeah.
And in my circles of people, I started, getting around business people and people with better mindsets, and they're like, they'll let you bellyache for a day, right? But
Mhm.
if you're whining about it on day 2, they're like, well, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Like, you want to be some kind of entrepreneur? Like, why don't you write a better one? And I did. I wrote the ultimate and complete podcast guide, which was neither ultimate nor complete, but it was light years ahead of the one that I had written. Had a couple people buy it to the tune of $3,000 worth
Yeah.
in just a couple of weeks, and realized that like I could be doing something that earns money, and that led into a course that subsequently got approved at Forbes Business School. Now it's available at 2 universities, so you can no kidding get college credit. As far as I know, I'm the only podcaster that has a college accredited course on podcasting, which is just
To
wild.
my knowledge, yeah, too. I've looked at a
Yeah.
lot of things and you don't meet too many people. And even with mastermind.com, which I use to build my content, I don't even hear those people they're accredited. We're just taking our collective wisdom, which could be a little or a lot, and we put it out
Hmm.
there and then we market and hope.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. It led to the course. It led to me opening my own podcast agency, which I still run today. I've got a team that helps with all the back end stuff. You record it, right? Give us the info about the guest, and we do all the back end work. Right. We do all the production. We create, we do the audio, the video, the show notes. We get the transcripts. Everything's fully edited, fully hyperlinked out. We create 7 social media clips or reels or TikToks or whatever you want to call them this week. And we put that all together. We even posted on your website a whole multimedia blog post to help drive and generate business, which is just fantastic. And then recently we started offering a service to help people get booked on podcasts. Pay us a fee, and we go on and do the legwork for you, help you get booked on shows. There's again, right? There was all these people. So I haven't done nonprofit architect for 3 years already, right?
Yeah.
It's been over 3 years since I recorded an episode. There's still 4,000 downloads a month on that show. I still get emails each and every week talking about, hey, can you help me do this nonprofit thing? I have some products for sale. I still get sales from all of that stuff that I've had in the past. I'm still
So
making
cool.
money on those things, right? Using this concept called passive influence. And it's crazy. It's still, ranked top in the top 5% globally across all shows, not just in this niche. Um, it's really amazing how, what this thing turned into. And it was really a redirect, because when I got started, I thought it would make sense to offer nonprofit coaching consulting. And it turns out nobody wanted that stuff. And this led into the conversation, with Richard Kaufman, is that I didn't know what I was going to do. I asked my mentor, I'm like, am I going to shut this down? He's like, well, what does your audience want? And I'm sorry, man. Are you on your phone?
I'm trying to look up the nonprofit architect to go show the audience. I was actually connecting with the audience. I was
Oh,
trying to
I
look for
got
it to see
you.
how popular it was. I was doing it with intention. I was listening. I was trying to show the audience that the truth is the truth. And yes, you can
Yeah.
still go over and find it. So you had a farewell episode in 2022, basically right when you retired.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I was not trying to be
Um,
rude. I was literally trying to look for your episode and to validate to the audience. It just took a while to search, so I apologize to the live audience. Usually, my old style episode, you would be live and I'd be researching and I would flash back and do that. So, kind of a new thing. So,
just
yes, the
checking, man.
artistic. Nope.
Making sure I'm still holding your attention here.
No,
Make sure I'm
you
still
have
holding your
pulled and
attention.
gravitated my attention enough that I was Googling you to validate the source, but we'll get back to that. But long story short, he is still popular. And if you want to listen up until 10/8/2022, that is his last episode. So
Yeah, yeah. Uh, so I was like, "Am I gonna be done here? Am I gonna shut this down?" My mentor is like, "Well, what does your audience want?" I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Have you asked them what they want from you?" And the overwhelming response was that we want to know how you got so good at podcasting. And that was that push to get me into the right direction to go down the right path, which brings me here. That ended up, landing me this gig on Parade Deck. Like, I couldn't have imagined that I would have started a show while deployed to the Middle East. I couldn't have imagined that I wouldn't be doing nonprofit stuff now because it made so much sense for me to do nonprofit stuff at that point in time.
yeah.
Right. Like I wouldn't have imagined that my show would have taken off. Like I didn't know any of that stuff was going to happen. Um, but when you do the right things for the right reasons, like it just tends to work out.
And that's a good thing in that. So that goes over and let's talk about the pivot today. So Parade Deck, we've been populated that in there back and forth based on bandwidth. That's why we have the banner go back and forth. Bandwidth goes low, want to bring your face back. So that's why we see the banner go back and forth. But it's
Yeah.
currently up there on Parade Deck. So what is the difference, what you're doing today, and what is Parade Deck exactly? Because I still don't even understand fully the concept, and I just enrolled to be part of this veteran podcast
Yeah.
community and potentially getting voted on. So I'm diving more into it. So if you can share with our audience, like what is Parade Deck and what is the differentiator of it?
Yeah, well, first off, it's our mission to amplify the military and veteran voice, right? There's not a lot of media companies out there that are focusing on this. Like, you can't go to Spotify or Apple and search military shows or veteran shows and get everyone on there that's a veteran. And we've got people in the space, right, that talk about military stuff. They talk about deployments and transition and mental health, but there's also podcasters like myself that talk about every single topic under the sun: business, nonprofit work, like you name it, health and fitness. There's veterans that are doing those kind of shows. And so our vision is to empower the military, veteran, and first responder creators through a couple of things: distribution, promotion, monetization, live event opportunities. And what does that look like, right? Like, what does that mean? It's kind of nebulous. Like, what is Parade Deck? Like, if you go download the app Parade Deck TV on Apple devices, it'll look like Netflix. You will look and be able to scroll through videos and categories of military creators. I don't know if we've got it just yet today, but you can also go on there and look through podcasts the same way. And we're actually, you'll get a hold of those. We're aggregating podcasts, videos, events, and live streams from verified creators. Right now, if you go to log in, they're going to run you through ID Me and have to verify your military service. You'll end up taking a video. It's a little convoluted for my taste, but they don't maintain any of your data. They just verify who you are and move on. And once you're verified, right, all these other platforms, you can make 1,000 accounts if you wanted to, right? You're like, I've got 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Like, that person could have made all of those email accounts and verified. There's no way to stop bots from creating people with multiple accounts. But we use, ID Me to keep verified creators on board there. We have an Apple TV channel. We've got the mobile app. We've got social media. We're helping you distribute across those channels. We're promoting creators through partnerships, feature placements, event appearances, and curated campaigns. We're going to be at live events this year. I look at my little board on the side here. We're going to be at the VFW National Convention in August in Columbus. We're going to be at Military Influencer Conference, or MIC, in Atlanta in September. We're going to be at MCon in October live, and we'll have the whole parade deck experience set up, the stage, all the bells and whistles. And we've got verified creators that are going to be there sharing their story, going through interviews, and doing all that stuff. And then what we're really building towards too is actual monetization. We're in talks right now with a media company to bring on ads so our verified creators can get paid. Anyone that's doing podcasting for any length of time knows that it's a wonderful thing to do, but it takes a couple $100 a month to get this thing up and running. And money out of your pocket for too long makes you start to consider whether or not you want to keep doing those things. What we're eventually building towards is having, and we also have a community on Mighty Networks. What we're eventually building towards, hopefully by the end of next year, is having an app where you have all of the content, right? Audio, video, the live stream content. You've got access to all the creators, all the creator profiles, like the creator profile that you built, having the actual community aspect in there where you can go into a creators group and work with them directly. You can go into a group at large and connect with the military community. And then we also have our events. We do a handful of live events every year, but we also live stream other people's content. And then, of course, in October 5th, we're live streaming the Veteran Podcast Awards. Now, you asked how I got here. While I was in Bahrain, I also started two things called the Veteran Podcast Network. And then I worked with Shane Cunningham from Broken Jarhead. He messaged me. We had a great conversation. He's like, hey, I've got this URL. What should I do with it? And it was veteranpodcastawards.com. And I was like, you should start it and I should host it. And he said, done, right? He was a back end guy looking for a front end guy. And I was a front end guy looking for a back end guy.
Yeah.
And, we built this thing and he ended up getting really busy with his day job. And we ended up selling, the Veteran Podcast Awards to Parade Deck. And with my wife's brain surgery and all that going on, I ended up moving the Veteran Podcast Network, which had 75 shows on it, ended moving that up over to Parade Deck. And then it was perfect because last year when I got in my wreck, I wasn't able to do my business. I wouldn't have been able to do the Veteran Podcast Awards. Parade tried to do it. It was kind of a false start last year. We didn't make it happen. And I would have been able to build those things. And then I had some time off and was able to heal and able to work through those things. And I met, Andrew Appleton in person at PodFest, of all places, and Military Creator Con in Orlando in January. A couple of conversations later, he brought me on to be the podcast director here at Parade Deck. And all of the things that I had cared about and had been working on over the years ended up under Parade Deck's control. And then he brought me back to continue basically building with him the same vision I already had, where you can go and find military and veteran creators that are all doing good things and actually connect with them and build community together far beyond, a conference one time a year, far beyond once the uniform goes away and we put on a different uniform, right? A place to connect, a place to belong, a place to grow together. And my job as a podcast director is to really help guide and grow our podcasters and our creators within that community, because I've got all that knowledge. I've got all that care. And that's what I'm here to do. I know you and I have had conversations about how to do podcasting better. And here we are implementing them in real time.
This one was huge. This was probably the biggest challenge for me. And it almost brought me back to working mental health, because I could counsel or I could get questions done. And now blurring the lines. And that actually took me out of the military, because I could not blur the lines. I couldn't get all the questions and I couldn't get the person. I'd either connect with the person and forget the questions, or go over and get the questions and it's cold as ice. And then they're like, you're not connected with the patient and now you have no diagnosis. So you came in and you almost like took my podcast and stitched it together. The two things that were needed is to connect, but still hit the major things in there in that particular regard. And you blended it beautifully, just like your business and ministry and calling, what you're doing right now, is that you took connecting back with family, going over and starting a podcast while you're deployed. And now it's almost like brought full circle that you basically can just share your stories and share your wisdom. And I think you're in the perfect role. I mean, I'm not trying to brag and boast. I mean, just from an honest perspective, that
Mhm.
when they said you were that person, it just fits. Because you meet other people and you're like, I do this. And I'm like, what? Why? Who? You're like, it's
Yeah.
like if you told me I was going to become a machine gunner, come on, just look at me. That's not going to happen. I'm going to blow off my shoulder the first shot, and then I'm just going to be a really disabled vet. And I'm going to be like, I fired one bullet, and it was over. So
Yeah, I don't think that way of you, and I think you could survive at least 3 bullets, but,
I'll
the
share a
the
dumb
reason
story later, but I can prove that I will not survive.
Well, I mean, like, you might be asking yourself, like, why would I, as a creator, come on over to Parade Deck? First off, it gets you something that you're not getting anywhere else. If you want to get a blue check mark, right, on any other service, you're now having to pay for verification of who you
Mhm.
are, which is ridiculous. You come over, you verify through ID Me, which is free. You get that verified check mark, right? We know that you're a real person. There's a free option, right? Everyone can come in and use a free option. There's a couple of paid options that get you on the app, get you access to cool tools like Boomcaster, which is a lot like StreamYard that we're using today, but it's cheaper and it's got the same tools and a lot more flexibility on the back. And then you get to do things that other people don't do. We invite you to come speak on stage when we go to these events. We get a hold of our creators and it's like, hey, we've got a spot for you on stage. Do you want to come and speak on stage in Vegas? And I tell you what, like, if you've never done that, if you've never been on stage in Vegas, Atlanta, Columbus, any of these places that we're going to be, like, it can change your whole trajectory. The photos from you on stage, microphone in hand, with the cool backgrounds, all the video promos, all the stuff that you're going to get from it, is you just can't get it anywhere else, right? Not this quality, not with what we're doing. I'm sure that stuff exists out there, but Spotify is not inviting you to come up on stage. YouTube, unless you get a bazillion downloads, right? They're not inviting you on stage at their events, right? iHeartRadio is not doing that stuff. We're inviting our creators to be on stage with us at these events, to be part of the family, to be part of the community, to do something beyond what they normally do. And that's just not something that you're getting anywhere else. Plus, when this monetization stuff goes through, you're actually going to be getting paid to be a creator on Parade Deck, and that's what we want. That's what we want our people to do, our people to have. Right now, you can come on, create a free creator account, and then you can have basically a links page to have all your stuff, all of your social media, your websites available where you want to listen to on podcasting websites. You can be as fancy with it or not. There's HTML. You can put a podcast player right there on your profile page. And instead of like, hey, where can I connect with you at? And be like, oh, this is my LinkedIn. This is my spot. This is all my stuff. You can just say, you can go find me on the Parade Deck at this, and you can connect with me however you want to. We have that stuff available. And right now, you had mentioned that you had signed up to be part of the Veteran Podcast Awards. It's still open. Registration is still open for anyone listening up and through July 15th. You can go on, make a free account, get yourself registered. There's no registration fee. After July 15th, we're going to open up voting. You can come in and you can vote for your favorite shows. You, the fans, are choosing who's going to be getting their name called October 5th. We're going to be doing a live stream event. Myself and Josh White, who is the 2022 Air Force Podcast of the Year and the Veteran Podcast of the Year, it's going to be my co-host. We're going to be hosting it live from somewhere, probably not from my back bedroom here, but somewhere, and hope to be calling your all's name.
I say your back bedroom is very inviting compared to my virtual screen. I'm just saying. If that's your back bedroom, you need to come redesign my house. I'm just saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Though, what else can I help you and your audience out with today, there, Daniel?
I think we're pretty much done, except for one thing, which is our challenge question at the end, because we always like to summarize our podcast into like a quick thing. Is that your entire story was amazing, and we want to go over and say if they only had 90 seconds to glean on what they could learn of what you've all shared? What would be 3 tactics that they could glean, that they could learn, that helps them to go over and thrive? Either being that better podcaster, being that better father, being that better provider, being that better military member, or even veteran, wherever direction you want to go. So that's
Yeah.
pretty much how we tied loose ends on our show.
Well, the 3 things I do to be successful haven't changed over the years. I show up with a great attitude, willing to do the work. And wouldn't you be surprised that those 3 things will help you get through damn near anything in life?
And I think those are the things that carry is key, and it's a big lesson to go over and learn. So, Travis, I want to thank you for coming on the show, sharing your wisdom, helping me to become a better podcaster while we're doing it live and everything else. And I want to give you the floor one last time if you want to do any shout outs or anything else, and then we're going to close for credits.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel, for having me on the show and having a good time, being open to some suggestions. I know not everybody is, but if you're listening to this, help out the people around you. Share this episode with someone that needs to hear a bit of encouragement, that needs some good in their life, that needs a good word. And then please head over to paradedeck.com, set up your own free account. If you've got a podcast, be part of the Veteran Podcast Awards. I hope to be calling your name here on October 5th.